29 nations, with a population of more than 1,400,000,000 persons, attend the historic conference in Indonesia's capital city of Bandung.
In spite of diversity that exists among its participants, let this conference be a great success.
In the past, we gathered to fight for independence. It is about justice. And now we are facing same challenge. It is about perspective that is poverty and underdevelopment.
Events are being held to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Bandung Conference. The conference brought about the Bandung spirit, which redefined international ties and formed the basis of the non-aligned movement.
Let's reignite the Bandung spirit. Let's continue the struggles of our forefathers 60 years ago. We have to work hand in hand to increase the prosperity of our people through economic cooperations and trade.
The Bandung spirit of equality, cooperation and solidarity will always be alive to inspire the global south.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and I hope you've had a good lunch. We are resuming with the next agenda of today's event. To set the scene for our afternoon session, we've had today the honor of hosting a special address by His Excellency Dr. Arif Havas Oegroseno, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. Before I welcome him, I'd like to give him a bit of introduction. We all know him as a seasoned diplomat, as a practitioner of international law. He previously served as ambassador of extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Republic of Indonesia to the Federal Republic of Germany from 2018 to 2024. He also served as Deputy for Maritime Sovereignty at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. Of course, he obtained a bachelor's degree from Universitas Diponegoro and a master's degree from the Harvard Institute for International Development and Harvard Law School in the US. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Excellency Arif Havas Oegroseno, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Pa Yusuf and colleague from CSIS. And I also would like to recognize in this room my boss, Pa Hasan Virayuda, my internal boss. So I'm a bit, normally I'm not nervous making speeches because I would just say whatever I want to say, but in front of Pa Hasan, I think, you know, that's why I bring all the paper because of him. Otherwise, I would just come and blurt. So, thank you very much once again for the invitations. I want to start with a story that took place in April 2023, I think. I was still in Germany as ambassador, and our president, Pak Jokowi, was in Germany, in Hanover. We were part of the Hanover Messe, largest industrial exhibition in the world, and Indonesia was a partner country at that time. We brought in around 200 industries coming to Germany. We had a really big event at the time. And after the official opening, it was Ramadan, so we were hosted by Chancellor Olaf Scholz in a very old, nice mayor house in Hanover, and we start the iftar, and Chancellor Olaf Scholz, after warmly welcoming us, he asked a very intriguing questions, and it took us about 30 seconds to reply. His question was, Mr. President, do you think non-life movement is still relevant? This is a question from German Chancellor in 2023. So apparently the largest economic power in Europe still looks at non-life movement as a very important element. So I was surprised because that was not in the talking point. The talking point is about the industry, how many machines you produce, how many cars you not produce. It took us about 30 seconds, and everybody's looking at each other. Oh, this is becoming geopolitical dinner. And President mentioned, of course, it's still very relevant. And then we continue the discussions on non-aligned movement in the dinner of Hannover Messe, the largest industrial event in the world. So if all the industrialists in Germany on the table is looking at non-aligned movement, whether it's still relevant or not, and they believe it's still relevant at that time, I think that coins very well with the discussions today. I was not here this morning, but hearing from different colleagues, it was again once reiterated that it is even more relevant. So one of the other challenges for me personally is to go around different invitation making speeches like this, and I have no time to make speech, so I asked ChatGPT. Those are all ChatGPT, okay? This is not made by my staff, neither by myself, so it's all ChatGPT production, right? So I'm going to deliver a speech to you, what ChatGPT was saying to me. And I, of course, give some addition here and there, you know, but mostly this is AI. And actually it makes more sense, right? So when you talk about relevance, whether non-aligned is still relevant, ChatGPT gives me 3 answers, which is the multipolarity of the world today, which is true, right? Strategic independence of country is needed, which is true. When I was in Germany and Europe, they had a question of being independence in terms of trying to make decisions on energy, on security umbrella, on economy, and those are the 3 things that for a very long time Europe was dependent on US for security umbrella, Russian gas and Chinese market, but those things proven to be difficult today. So they're looking at this being able to independently make a policy, and that I think why that was the questions of the German chancellors to President Jokowi. And then secondly, still relevant because of the global inequality still continues on until today. And of course, it still represents the voice of the Global South. Although, if we look at the terminology, Global South is not exactly the right terms. And the dynamics of the so-called South-South is also changed very much. Because when we talk about South-South or non-aligned movement in the 40s and the 50s, we're basically looking at the very stark differences between developing countries and developed countries. But today, the dynamics is different. Our GDP is larger than the Netherlands GDP, for instance. Many countries in the so-called South or non-aligned, they're very advanced. Here in our neighborhood, we have Malaysia, we have Singapore, non-aligned, they have a very advanced economy. And these are just an example, all those 3 things, current geopolitical situations, on the importance of being independent in trying to make our own policy. So strategic independence. But I want to focus also on the relevance of non-aligned movement in Africa and also in Asia specifically. Now in Africa, it has become a geostrategic battleground again. You see different so-called proxy wars. You see different conflicts still pestering in Africa, still ongoing. UN Security Council is not able to do anything in different parts of Africa, for instance. And of course, you have now a continuously similar issue since the 1940s, which is resource sovereignty. So in the past, you talk about oil, you talk about gas, and then you talk about diamond, and now you talk about critical minerals. So continuously a problem in Africa. And you still have the debt issue, economic injustice. You now have an additional problem of climate vulnerability, climate financing. The promise of climate financing, for instance, is not coming to life, as a matter of fact. And another additional issue, which is digital issue, the digital sovereignty, the digital gap. These are the modern, if you will, issue that very much impact the countries in Africa and very much impact how the non-aligned movement should be able to work on this particular issue. Now in Asia, we are again ground zero for great power rivalry. In the Second World War, of course, we were in that situation, and now we have a competitions, geopolitical rivalry in our regions. We have the clout and the economic power in Asia, much different than what happened in the 40s and the 50s. But the geoeconomics of Asia, including specifically ASEAN, now with the trade war situations, makes all of us need to see where is the quote-unquote alignment that we are going to develop. The Asian countries with a very strong economic development have a very strong potentials in global leaderships. Many BRICS nations are coming from Asia, for instance. And of course, there is an issue of climate again in Asia. I mean, in Africa, the direct impact is on the land, on the drought, on the climate for farming. But for us in Asia, rising sea level is very real. It's a very real threat. And also this is another element that we need to look at Asia. So those are the elements that I think requires a strategic independence on how we move about in organizing ourselves in all those different issues. Now, what are the strategies? How to do it? In a very simple terms of NAM to become relevant. I think we need to modernize the agenda of non-aligned movement. We need to discuss AI. We need to discuss digital divide. We need to probably even discuss critical raw minerals, for instance. I think the agenda of the non-aligned movement needs to be modernized to follow the current situation today. Stronger institutional capacity, it's very important. This, I think, we can see in the critical raw minerals. We should be able to share experience within the non-aligned movement, not just exporting the raw minerals, but how you increase your capacity in terms of processing, for instance. The leverage is very important as well because we hold a big voice. A discussion among non-aligned movement on climate financing, on the issue of critical raw minerals, on the issue of the impact of climate, for instance, how we can impact the global climate policy, for instance, is a very important element in the agenda of non-aligned movement. We need also to have a stronger messaging because we're using the technology, social media. The non-aligned movement may or may not be known by the younger generations these days. And I think this is the homework of many countries in the non-aligned movement, and as well as looking at the current geopolitics today, how we create partnership without dependency. This, I think, it's the challenge that we need to develop together. In Africa, I think we have an already running organization, the African Union. So a very strong link, cooperations with a very real agenda between the non-aligned movement and AU is very, very important. Similarly, here in Asia, link between the non-aligned movement, the existing regional architectures like the ASEAN, for instance, or even RCEP, the economic bloc, I think it's a very important as well. Promoting in Africa intra-African trade, in Asia, intra-Asian, and ASEAN especially intra-Asian trade. I just came back from Sabah. The purpose of my visit to Malaysia, to Sabah, was to try to develop a stronger economic relation between state and provinces. We are trying to see the possibility of expanding the cooperation between, say, Sabah and Kalimantan Utara, Kalimantan Timur, and also Sulawesi Utara, Sulawesi Barat, and Sulawesi Selatan, because looking at the trade war today, we have to look at the number as well, that 10% of the global trade is the American contributions. 85% is coming from somewhere else. And that 85% should include ASEAN. We need to develop a stronger intra-ASEAN trade through different ways and means, and including also trade between states and provinces. Digital technology, I think it should be used in both Africa and Asia. What I'm talking is, for instance, a very simple thing like QRIS in ASEAN or QRIS in the whole Africa. Imagine the cutting the middleman in terms of payment. It will create lots of economy in the region as well. This we can develop ourselves within ASEAN, and this also within Africa, for instance. And both in Africa and Asia, I think we need to strengthen the power of the civil society. So I think all in all, whether to answer the question whether non-aligned movement is still relevant, the answer, it is relevant. It is even more relevant. But then the issue is how we are making ourselves relevant. What are the strategies, what are the agenda, what are the issues, and how we are going about to do all those different agenda in the name of the cooperations between the non-aligned movement, which I believe the dynamics have changed dramatically today in terms of the economy, in terms of the ability of the leadership of each country of a non-aligned movement, technologically as well, geopolitically as well. So we need to leverage that to bring about a stronger non-aligned movement and with a much more concrete cooperations. So I will just close there. I think we share same thinking, and I would imagine, Pa Wanandi, that the result of this discussion today would be recommendations or steps that or agenda that can be followed up by countries of non-aligned movement, Indonesia included, in terms of how we can lead in some of the important agenda that can bring the non-aligned movement even more relevant today. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Excellency. First, I understand that you were willing to take one or two brief questions from the audience. So may I invite members of the audience who's willing to take a question?
2 questions free, third one pay.
All right, 2 questions are free, third one is paid.
Yes.
From Singapore.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. So this morning we talked a lot about the Bandung principles, norms that have defined the non-aligned movement. But as we go into the global south, what do you see are the, which is very different, how do you see are the norms, the rules, the principles that can define a global south today? As an international lawyer, what are the emerging norms, rules, principles that would help us to define this global south that will have to be different from the non-aligned movement?
A number of things came to mind, Prof, actually, coming out of COVID. So there should be an international treaty, or at least arrangement if they don't want to go to treaty, on the rapid response of international community in pandemic or future pandemic. Because as my experience, I was in Europe, and when they found out the productions of the vaccines, so the first step of many European countries was to ban the export. So benevolence, charity is gone to the drain when you face this kind of thing. So this is, I think, is one aspect that is relevant for developing countries. Second, again, I want to underline, Prof, on the critical raw minerals. There was a resolution long time ago, I think 1968, on the permanent sovereignty of countries over its natural resources. It has become international law in terms of customary international law, but somehow it was lost in WTO. And there was a reading or article in WTO which basically said you cannot ban export of raw minerals. So there is actually you know, what do you call it, differences of the international law on WTO, because I think the WTO regulations on critical raw minerals is against the customary international law. But I think this is a typical negotiations in one specific element, Prof, where if you send a trade negotiators to negotiate on trades, they might not know other kind of aspect. I'll give you an example, Prof. There is only one word, ocean, in Paris Agreement. 2015, I was there with a number of countries. We are trying to put 3 paragraphs on oceans in the Paris Agreement. The idea is very simple. 75% of Earth is water. We are going to talk about climate change. We should include oceans. But the discussion was unbelievably difficult, even for our own negotiator, because 99% of negotiators in Paris Agreement are terrestrial people. They are foresters. They know very little or not at all about the oceans. So for them, including ocean has become a politically impossible situation because they don't know. And they want to have the result quick. So they finally agree to put the word ocean in preambular paragraph. And only in 2022, 3, we are talking about a very rather silly exercise. It's called mainstreaming oceans in climate discussion. I mean, how can we mainstream 75% of planet into discussion? This should be done in 2015. But I think this issue happens in many places. So you need sometimes someone who has a larger, broader view to negotiate on some very important international treaty. So these are the 2 that I'm thinking in mind. And the experience, I think, is UNCLOS. UNCLOS 1982 basically is an international norm that was developed by developing countries. The archipelagic states are all developing and non-aligned countries. Those who are demanding for extension of continental shelf, they are from developing countries. Those who wanted to have an EEZ, I think the African from the east, they want to have an EEZ, very, very large space, for instance. So that, I think, as an example, how developing countries, the non-aligned movement, can work together in creating one norm on international law. So those 2 issues that I have in mind for a while, actually. And critical raw minerals, I think the issue should not go only on WTO, but the underlining element of how the resolution of 1968 or so should be able to be revisited, to be looked again and become international treaty, hopefully. Yes?
Perhaps one more question from the audience. Sorry, Susie?
Thank you, Pak Havas. I'm Susie Sudarman from Universitas Indonesia. When we look back at non-aligned movement, it seems like it is a social order, international social order. And the theory of communication says to maintain a social order, you have to continue conflicting communication. And you have mentioned about the problems of COVID, a problem of critical minerals. You know that the social order of non-aligned movement need to have conflict communications to other social orders so that your social order will be maintained. Is this one of the policy of Kemenlu right now, or are we trying to be so sweet to everyone that in the end conflict communication doesn't exist and your social order cannot be maintained? That's my question.
Yeah, I think what we are looking is how countries in the non-aligned movement individually can maximize the benefit that they have. Because say one country in Africa has a lot of resources, they have a lot of critical minerals. Investors come, right? Investors from the US, from China, from Europe comes, and they may not have an ability to negotiate properly with all those giants in terms of foreign investment, for instance. And foreign investment, they need them domestically, but at what level they are willing to bring in and to create the contract, you know, between them and those countries. Sometimes the investment law simply does not exist. If you talk about investment law as part of the social order or social contract of that particular country, for instance. So those countries are in a very, very weak situations. Whereas on the other hand, like Indonesia, you have the ability to negotiate, the ability to create an environment where we have a both win-win situation. This is part of the Indonesian law, part of the Indonesian social contract. This also happened, and I know in Chile, for instance. In Chile, I think one of the largest producers of lithium, they have their own social contract where the lithium coming from the land of the indigenous people are being respected, some rights are being protected, and where are the place that you can extract, for instance. So they have a very complicated system for investment and extraction because they're able to do that. But many countries don't have that capacity, right? But we can see this as a helicopter view that if we can share informations and possibly even if we can develop a norm like what Professor mentioned before, that would be great for those countries who have no ability to defend themselves against large foreign investors coming to their country. So each and individual social contracts or social order of the country with such large investment can at least be mitigated the risk if we be together in trying to address the common issue and trying to see what are the best way to come out of it. So this is also a very important element. And also the possibility of investment coming from non-aligned movement, non-aligned countries. We have done that. Indonesia has done a number of investment in Africa, for instance, not in critical minerals, but in other area. We had our food productions in Nigeria. We have our pharma productions in Ghana, for instance, in South Africa. We are planning to establish a vaccine manufacturing in West Africa, where we would create the raw materials in Indonesia and then send to them and they do all the packaging. So this type of cooperations simply did not exist in the past, right? It's always from the West to invest in developing countries. But now, if we can bring these strategic issues, come forward, having the spirit of the non-aligned movement, then we can leverage ourselves among the members to work together much more with trust, I would say, because I think that is a key issue. That foreign investors come to your country, then the issue is about trust. So, yes, Ibu, it's not just being nice, but I think it's also has a strategic value for the host country, for the investor as well, and how we can pool our knowledge to, to be able to stand even taller if there are other countries coming to any member of the land movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pak Havas. I think that's a great session. Please join me in giving another round of applause for Pak Havas.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Pak Havas, may I ask you to stay a little longer just in front of the stage for us to do a short group photo. Next to him, may I invite Pak Yusuf, Pak Hasan Wirayuda, Pak Rizal, Pak Yose, Pak, to join us in front of the stage for a short group photo session. Pak Yose, Bu Vivi, Bu Safia Muhibat, Ibu Medellina, if she's here, okay. And of course, our speakers from the afternoon session. May I please invite Excellency Fekadu, Excellency Machocha. Now we move on to our main session, the conversation, Dasar Sila and the need for rebuilding a better world order, the role of the Global South. For this session, I would like to invite our moderator, Dr. Shafia Muhibat, the Deputy Executive Director for Research at CSIS Indonesia. May I please invite Dr. Shafia to the stage? May I also please invite to the stage the speakers of the session, Excellency Professor Fekadu Beyene Aleka, the Ambassador of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia to Indonesia, Excellency Machocha Moshe Tembele, Ambassador of the United Republic of Tanzania to Indonesia, Ambassador Nguyen Phu Thum, Professor and Senior Advisor of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Dr. Cheng Kuik, Professor of International Relations at the Institute of Malaysian International Studies, National University of Malaysia. Dr. Shafia, the session is yours.
Thank you so much, Wafa. You've been an excellent MC all day today, so I'm really happy to be able to chair this second session, all in all, but I think this is a session where we expect to go more in depth into some of the issues that we've been talking about since this very morning. So I would like to first thank all of you for staying with us until the afternoon. Of course, it's not always easy to be involved in a discussion in an afternoon session, so I'm very happy to see that all of you are still with us this very nice afternoon. So this is the second session. The title is Dasar Sila. Dasar Sila is the 10 principles of Bandung. If you look at the exhibition outside, we displayed two photos, a photo of the original script of the Dasar Sila Bandung, of the 10 Bandung principles. So one is in English, and I think one is in Bahasa Indonesia. So if you take a look at all these 10 principles, you would see that, as rightly mentioned by Foreign Minister Marty earlier this morning, the 10 principles are actually very much forward-looking, considering it was written in 1955. All of them are very forward-looking, and all of them, as we'd like to discuss today and also question, we argue that they are still very much relevant for us today in 2025. So, but it's been interesting though. So the title of this session is Dasar Sila and the Need for Rebuilding a Better World, the Role of the Global South. So not only that we are trying to find relevance from the Dasar Sila to now, but we are also trying to put into context to the role of the Global South. I've been finding it very interesting because this morning Foreign Minister Marty said that he prefers global majority to Global South. Even just now, Vice Minister Havas told us that even he thinks that Global South is not actually the 100% correct terminology for this. So I think this is something that would also be interesting to discuss in this session today. So I'm lucky, we are lucky to have four very, very prominent speakers with us today to guide us to talk about, if you look at the title on my backdrop here, we'd actually like to go to the very end of the title, the road ahead. So this morning we talked about challenges. We mentioned about aspirations. So hopefully this session we can talk about the very last, which is the road ahead. So we have 4 speakers with me today. Let me just very briefly introduce to all of you all 4 of them. The first one is His Excellency Ambassador Professor Fekadu Beyene Aleka, who is the ambassador of Ethiopia to Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and ASEAN. Ambassador Aleka was previously also commissioner for the Environment, Forest, and Climate Change Commission of Ethiopia, and he also served as professor of food sciences and technology at Havas University. So welcome, Ambassador. The second speaker is His Excellency Ambassador Machocha Moshe Tembele, who is the Tanzanian ambassador to Indonesia. He is a career diplomat and also previously served as the personal assistant to the former president of Tanzania. So welcome and thank you, Ambassador Tembele. Next to him is His Excellency Ambassador Professor Nguyen Phu Tung, who is a professor and senior advisor at the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. And he also previously served as the ambassador of Vietnam to the Republic of Korea. Nice to see you again, as always, Ambassador Tung. And last but not least is Professor Cheng Kuik, who is a professor of international relations at the National University of Malaysia. And he also concurrently a non-resident senior fellow at the John Hopkins University's Foreign Policy Institute and non-resident scholar at Carnegie, China. Welcome, Professor Kuik. So, 4 very prominent speakers, and this is let's style this a very informal chats, among us, where we again try to look deeper into some of the things that was mentioned today. So if I may begin with you, Ambassador Aleka. So we talked a lot in this keynote sessions. We talked a lot about Asia and to a certain degree also Southeast Asia. We mentioned about ASEAN and how Indonesia played a role in ASEAN. I'd like to go into the African continent now, trying to look at it similarly. Ethiopia has been to a certain extent influential as well in Africa. If you could just give us a brief overview. Regional organizations is something very important. If we look at, the principles of the Dasasila as well. One of the, I think it was the, let me take a quick look. The 9th principle, promotion of mutual interest and cooperation, meaning that regional organizations is something that is very important in this context. Could you explain to us, the dynamics in Africa and also more importantly about, Ethiopia leveraging its position in the African Union to cultivate stronger South-South cooperation frameworks? Please, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Safia. Before responding to the question, I would like to thank the CSIS for giving me this opportunity and also for arranging this type of dialogue. Thank you once again. Coming back to Ethiopia, Ethiopia and Indonesia share a profound and enduring friendship that transcends diplomacy. For over 6 decades, our nation have stood together, and Ethiopia was one of the members of during the Bandung Conference in 1955, and Ethiopia also member of the non-aligned movement, now member of BRICS. So Ethiopia played a very important role in the liberation of African countries from colonialism. As an independent nation for a long time, and also as hosting the African Union in Addis Ababa, the headquarters, Ethiopia played a very important role in the implementation of the Bandung principles. Currently, Africa is working very hard in regional consolidation of, or regional integration of the country through trade. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is now moving very well. And Ethiopia is playing a very active role in that, so that the regional economy will be very strong and they can withstand the global challenges. At the same time, Ethiopia played a very important role in peacekeeping, both in Africa and also globally, because of the historical legacy. Ethiopia's role is very important, and as one of the important principles of Bandung conference was sovereignty, independence, and freedom of people. So Ethiopia is playing a very important role in that respect, also in the African and also beyond. Generally, what we value is collaboration is very, very important, so that countries can discuss, understand each other, and through understanding, respect each other. And it's very important that countries need to work bilaterally, multilaterally, and as well as regionally. So Ethiopia plays by playing a role model in that aspect. Ethiopia tries to maintain this policy sovereignty. Ethiopia wants to maintain its own policy sovereignty, but at the same time support others to be sovereign and work also together in specific areas of interest, which is mutually beneficial for the concerned actors. So in that way, Ethiopia is playing a very important role, and will keep playing that role. And the relation between Indonesia and Ethiopia is in a very good situation. We need to work, creating opportunity for the young people, particularly in capacity building, and also in sharing of resources and the sharing of technologies, so that two countries and also other actors in the region can withstand the global challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Let me just, before we discuss further on your points about bilateral relations, of course, very interesting seeing the various connections between individual African countries and individual Asian countries, and trying to link them together, and then looking at also the regional organizations. Can I move on first to Ambassador Tembele? Tanzania was actually not part of the Asia-Afrika conference in 1955, but it has been a very active and prominent member of the non-aligned movement since gaining independence in 1961. So Tanzania has played quite a very strong role in the non-aligned movement. How do you see, Tanzania's current role in advancing the interests of the global South, and then still, keeping the spirit of the non-aligned movement as well? Please, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very good question, and I want to join my colleague, Ambassador Fekadu, to thank CSIS for inviting me to this very important gathering. Let me just give a brief history that at least will try and build a response to your question. Tanzania holds a very sentimental value to the Bandung Conference in terms of rising and consolidating the political consciousness of our country. And the reason is that, the Bandung Conference took place just 1 year after the birth of the political party that was responsible, for organizing our struggle for independence. It was called TANU, Tanganyika Africa National Union, which was formed in 1954. So the Bandung Conference took place at a time where politically we were very nascent, and therefore the political ramification of the Bandung Conference in the political thinking of our nation was massive, and it is for that reason that the first president of Tanzania, Mwalimu Nyerere, was extremely influenced by the 10 principles of Bandung Conference, and even when we got the independence in 1961, it is no accident that we were the pioneering members of the non-aligned movement, and we were also very active, participant in the South-South Cooperation, and the South-South Commission that was formed. Is President Nyerere was the first chairman, and also it is because of the principles of the Bandung Conference that Tanzania was the headquarter of the liberation struggles for the Southern Africa. So it was that influence of the Bandung Conference in the political lifeline, of our country. That's why I started by saying, the Bandung Conference has so much political influence in the political thinking of our country. Now, if I have to move a bit forward, the reason we thought that the principle of the Bandung had so much utility in the political lifeline of our country, it is because at that time of the Cold War, there was a feeling of political hopelessness because we were still fighting for independence, and only 5 countries, 6 countries actually from Africa that participated, but most of the countries in Africa were still under colonial occupation. So there was that sense of political hopelessness that was all over, in Africa, and the thinking of Mwalimu Nyerere by then, which was very much influenced by the spirit of the Bandung, that even if we attain our political independence, it would be meaningless if all other African countries are still under colonialism. And it is for that reason that he was ready, to use the modest resources that we had to help other countries, to also struggle for the independence. So Tanzania was the headquarters of the independence struggle of the Southern Africa. Now, the reason I've given that background, because there is a striking similarity with the economic hopelessness that we in Africa feels currently. And I think the renaissance of the Bandung spirit, but now focusing more on the economic aspect, is the imperative necessity. And Tanzania is ready to play an important role with that, and we continue to understand the very important role that Indonesia played, not only in the Bandung, but also in the South spirit. So I thought I should make this point, that the political hopelessness that we felt then and the economic hopelessness that we feel now, points to one very important fact, that the Bandung spirit now is alive, and the renaissance is extremely important, but only we need to recalibrate now and focus more on the economic aspects of the Bandung Conference. And this is what Tanzania is so much ready to play with, and it is for that reason that it is also no accident that, we never used to have an embassy here. So it was opened in just 2022, but because of the importance we attach to the leadership of Indonesia in the South-South, within the first year, we were able to have, the visit of the heads of state. And in diplomatic terms, that is a very, very big thing. And it explains the importance that we attach to the relationship between Tanzania and Indonesia. So I thought probably I should stop there. I thought it's important to explain the importance that we attach, to the Bandung Conference and the South-South Cooperation per se. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. That was fascinating, I think, learning about some of the points in history and how Tanzania positions itself still, looking at taking the spirit from the non-aligned movement and also the South-South Cooperation. Thank you so much for explaining that. Next, I'll move on to Ambassador Tong. Learning from some of the points that was said by both ambassadors here, sometimes when we look at the Dasasila, all the 10 points are mostly about, political security issues. We talked about non-intervention, we talked about human rights and so on. But when you fast forward to the current situation, you talk about relations between Asia and Africa. It's mostly we talk about trade, we talk about economy. And when you talk about that, Vietnam, we can say that is is an economic powerhouse, at least in Southeast Asia. It's very strong economically. How does Vietnam position itself looking at this current relationship between Asia and Africa? Please.
Thank you, Fifi, for this question. But before answering your question, I'd like to once again thank CSIS for giving me a very excellent opportunity to be here sharing my views on this important issue. I would like to give something like a roundabout, going around the question by giving my answer. From this morning, I witnessed the two speakers before me speaking about the economic and geostrategic relevance of the Bandung Conference. And I would like to think that we are missing one very important aspect, which is sentimental. The Bandung Conference started with the we feeling by all the countries that were participating or that were not participating in this conference, because we were feeling the bond among the countries that were fighting for national independence. And that is a very strong bond among us. And that was the foundation for the non-aligned movement and for the cooperation among the Asian countries and Asian and African countries. And from my own perspective, I was born in the 60s. I personally felt the bond because our beloved founding father, Ho Chi Minh, was telling us that these are the countries that are our friends. And he had built a personal, strong personal bonds with President Sugiono, with President Nehru, and Sekou Touré, and all the other of his ranking. So we were taught during the schools that we must be friends, and we must cooperate, and we must show solidarity with the Asian and African fellows, because we are fighting for our national independence. And this, like I said, forged the bond, which is sentimental. And now I see it not a strong factor in the cooperation among the among the Asian and African countries. And I always see it, the we feeling among the ASEAN members. And I think that the ASEAN success story based basically on the we feeling sentiment. And I think that this should be promoted among, again, the ASEAN countries, of course, but the Asian countries, and then the Asian and African countries. And that would be something like a precondition before we think of promotion of economic and political or diplomatic relations. So that is the starting point, a little bit of a personal experience. Related to that is the second point of Vietnam's experience. Before we are talking about Vietnam as a powerhouse, okay, I also want to share with you this kind of sentimental bond again. Recently, Vietnam sent our military personnel to Africa, serving in the PKO context. And to our surprise, wherever our military personnel were present, we got so much positive feelings from the local people, because they still remember Vietnam as a country fighting against America, against France, for our national independence. And that serves as the very convenient and very effective tools for connecting our staff with the local people. And that served and facilitate the performance of our people there. And it reminds us of the past that we have this kind of historical experience that we share together. And I think that from that, we have so many positive feedback and responses when we approach the African countries for cooperation in economic and in political and diplomatic aspect. So I think that the context for our discussion about Bandung conference reminds me of what we should do in terms, first of all, of reconnecting the countries in the context of the historical experiences, reminding us, especially the younger people, younger generation, of the sentimental bonds that our forefather has left behind for us.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tong. I think that's fascinating learning some of the sentimental factor when discussing about some of the issues related to non-aligned movement and also the Bandung spirit. Professor Kuik, since this morning I mentioned about some of the sort of like quote-unquote disagreements about the use of Global South. And I think one of the points that have been mentioned, I think, by various scholars and experts is that, you know, when you use Global South, you create some sort of a sense that there's a difference between Global South and Global North. When what we're looking forward is actually trying to create more and more cooperation. I'd just like to get your insights, whether or not this is something that's currently occurring. You know, how are these countries that were involved, countries mostly in Asia, Africa, how do they how do they navigate with the pressures from the major powers, from some of the global North? Or now we talked about great power competition. How do they navigate among these different pressures created by this competition? You've written a lot about hedging as well. Do you see any of the Asia-Africa countries as countries that are currently hedging in the midst of great power competition? Please.
All right. Thanks very much, Fifi, for your kind introduction and also a very tough, penetrating question I will address to that. Selamat siang and good afternoon to everyone. Let me begin by thanking the organizer, CSIS, but particularly Pak Yusuf, Pak Rizal, Yose, Fifi, and also Lina, and also their team. You know who you are, for having me here. Such a pleasure to join this distinguished group of panelists and also audience. So let me address and also respond to Fifi for a very good question. About particularly like the hedging, which actually this is not the first time that we are hearing. In fact, during the press conference, one of the reporters was asking Havas about the hedging as well, whether Indonesia, by joining BRICS, expressing joining the OSCE, are you hedging, right? So let me provide a frank answer as an academic. I guess the panelists here, they are all very important persons wearing many hats. I'm the only one who only wear one hat, which is academic. Yeah? So let me do my job. If you know that I sound very academic, there are some concepts and all that, you know that I'm doing my job here. And academic also means that I got the license to be not so diplomatic, right? This is why I am. So as an academic, let me provide this answer by saying, by making 3 points. Yeah, by making 3 points of indicating and also getting to know whether some countries, whether in Africa, in Asia, whether they are non-members, they are not non-members, regardless of whether they attended 1955 Bandung Conference or not, if you see these 3 things, then you know that someone is hedging, right? And why I want to identify 3 indicators to answer that question, primarily because of today, we all know that almost all of us use the same word hedging, but with pretty different meanings in mind. Some friends told me that they think hedging is bad, is negative. Hedging means that you are speculative, you are double-faced, you are not loyal, you are indecisive, sitting on the fence, blah, blah, blah. I'm aware of that, but I disagree. I disagree primarily. I think that those are misunderstandings. In fact, hedging, let me begin by arguing, it's human instinctive behavior. If you are human, you tend to be a hedge when you are under conditions of high stakes. The stakes are too high and too low. Big powers are pushing you. Second condition, high uncertainty. Trump 2.0, very uncertain. But even before Trump 2.0, you know big power relations has always been uncertain, right? And therefore, hedging is not a bad thing. It's just a human instinct under uncertainty and also high stakes. So, and I also want to clarify that hedging is actually policy without pronouncement. No hedging countries are going to tell the whole world, hey, we are hedging, right? Because they will defeat the purpose. They will increase the risk rather than lower the risk. So hedging is policy without pronouncement, and therefore, how do we know if countries are hedging or not? Let me, this is where the three indicators come in, right? And then you can judge whether Indonesia, whether ASEAN countries, whether African countries, or elsewhere, Central Asia, Latin America, whether they are hedging in one way or another, whether or not their leaders use the word hedging, right? First is actually about, of course, the very theme here, right? NAM, Bandung, we are thinking about the word non-alignment. Am I right? Non-alignment. Non-alignment, again, has many meanings, but in today's context, we know that non-alignment means that giants, big powers are competing. Non-aligned means that you are not taking sides with any of the powers, right? 1955, during a Bandung conference, non-alignment is the ends, it is also the means. How do you pursue non-alignment between the powers, competing powers in the context of a Cold War? Is non-alignment, meaning no alliance. So Malaysia was not in 1955, not in Bandung. Not only because of we were still not gained independence yet, right? But even when we gained independence in 1957, until 1970, we were not pursuing non-alignment. We put all our eggs in the West basket, right? AMDA, so on and so forth. And then later, FVDA. We joined NAM only in 1970. So we are latecomer, right? But this is where my first point come in. Hedging has to be not taking sides, but today's not taking sides cannot be passive and reactive. It has to be active. So the first indicator of a non-alignment, not about hedging, is that you are not only not taking sides, you are actually trying to actively signaling that you are not taking sides either by speeches or by actions. So the first indicator is active neutrality or active non-alignment. I know that Latin American scholars today are using a word about the active non-alignment. When Southeast Asian scholars read that, we know they are actually talking about hedging. But first indicator, active neutrality or active non-alignment. Second indicator, having active neutrality clearly doesn't make your action as hedging, right? Second action is actually about diversification. And diversification has to be inclusive. Inclusive diversification in the sense that you are not just diversifying your development cooperation or strategic alignment partnerships with one camp. You are actually doing it inclusively. And this is where today, non-alignment as a goal is being pursued by multi-alignment as the means. How do you make sure that you're not aligning with anyone? You are not aligning with anyone by you are trying to forge partnership, cooperation, some form of alignment, not alliance, with all sides inclusively. That's the second element. Third and final element is what we will call as adaptive offsetting, right? Offsetting means that you cannot say yes and say no to the big powers all the time. You need to do both. Offset. Why is that? If you keep saying yes to all sides, then you are losing your sovereignty. You are losing your independence. You are becoming subservient in one way or another. But if you keep saying no, then you are signaling to that particular power that you are actually siding with one against the other. So if you are hedgers, by instinct, you know that you need to both say yes and say no in one way or another. I think India, Ambassador Rajiv is watching at me. So I think India is a perfect example of hedging, right? Whether or not this is being used explicitly. Who else is a member of Quad? Who else is also a member of BRICS at the same time, right? I think India has that instinct of non-aligned as the goal. You do need to do a multi-alignment as the means. So now today, we know that in Southeast Asia, we have not just Indonesia, a full member of BRICS. In fact, early on, Thailand, Malaysia, I think at some point Vietnam was also appeared on the list that we are expressing interest to join BRICS in one way or another. And some say that we seems to be like tilting towards one side over the other. The answer is no. Hedging means what? Multi-alignment, inclusive way. So at the same time, when countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, and maybe Vietnam after Xi Jinping's visit, are associating with BRICS, at the same time, we keep all the alignment cooperation that are very much Western-centric. In fact, as we are talking, we are not just doing, I think, joining cooperation for all sides. In fact, ASEAN continue to be the anchoring institute, and that's my last point. Last point in the sense that today, I think we are seeing that the countries are becoming more active, more inclusive, but also adaptive by when things become more uncertain. You are trying to create more mechanism rather than less mechanism. Why is that? Because of you need to have more partners to work together. And I would think that, I think Fifi was the one who emphasized that for this panel, you want to focus about the road ahead. I know this is your second round of questions, but let me kind of like playing the bridge role by saying, ASEAN and ASEAN Plus have been a classic form of active, inclusive and adaptive hedging one way or another. Some say that ASEAN is just a talk shop, right? Many in Southeast Asia would disagree. Yeah, ASEAN is inadequate, is insufficient, but always indispensable in one way or another, in the sense that we actually trying to bridge countries near and far. ASEAN Plus 3 is a matter of ASEAN trying to bridge Southeast and Northeast Asia country. ASEAN did not stop at that. East Asia Summit 2005, you see that East Asia countries are being bridged with Australia, New Zealand, and also India, right? East Asia Summit, our set would not be possible without the ASEAN bridging role and all that. And now this year, we know that ASEAN countries are also talking about a new mechanism called ASEAN GCC China. So we are seeing the bridging role being a player on the basis of ASEAN and ASEAN Plus by bridging not just Asia countries in this part of the world, but also with GCC. Today, and with Ambassador, we were talking about over lunch, we still do not have the ASEAN-AU institutional links. I'm pretty sure it's a matter of when and how fast, rather than whether. Since we are already forging and bridging with GCC countries outside of the typical Asia, East Asia, why not with Africa in one way? I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Kuik. So this has been very interesting, So from all speakers, we have basically the idea that, we all agree that this is relevant. This remains relevant in today's global political and economic landscape. Learning from each country's experience, the relevance might be different in one way or the other, but we all agree that this remains relevant. So I think the big question now is that, how should these principles be adapted to the current challenges? And that's the big question, how? Should we still, as suggested by Professor Kuik, should we still be using the frameworks in regional organizations? We look at, existing institutions like ASEAN, ASEAN Plus, African Union, with all the challenges and the benefits as well. Should we remain using this strategy and try to improve that one way or the other? Or should we come up with new ideas, new inventions, new types of cooperation, of collaboration? And if we do either of these alternatives, what should be the top priorities? What issues do we have? I know Ambassador Aleka here, for example, is an expert in food security. Should that be a top priority for the Asia-African relations nowadays? Or do we find other, different frameworks, different alternatives of working together? So I'd like to get all four speakers here, their opinion on this. The big how question, how do we get there? How do we continue to make this relevant? How do we move beyond the current stage of working together when there are, the challenges are different, of course. 1955 to 2025, the challenges, the geopolitical challenges are extremely different. Should we remain using the same method of working together, or should we be more inventive and coming up with new solutions? Can I start with you again, Ambassador?
Thank you. How should this could be adopted? In my opinion, to adopt the Bandung spirit to modern challenges, we have to opt for several strategies. And for example, the first one could be emphasizing multilateralism. Strengthening multilateralism or multilateral institutions to ensure equitable representation and decision making can help to address global governance issues. So we need to call for reform in bodies of like the United Nations Council. That is very essential to reflect contemporary realities. Another strategy could be fostering economic cooperation. Developing nations should enhance South-South cooperation through trade agreements that can avoid, say, tariffs, and technology exchange, reducing dependence on traditional powers or on major actors. Another one is promoting sustainable development, addressing global challenges such as climate change. It requires a collective approach that incorporates the principle of equity and justice outlined in the Bandung Principle. Sustainable development initiatives should be framed within this context to ensure that all nations benefit equitably. Generally speaking, geopolitical landscape has evolved since 1955. The core tenant being Bandung Spirit continue to inspire efforts towards a more just and cooperative global order. Adapting these principles to current challenges will be the key in fostering peace, stability, and mutual respect among nations. Coming to the priorities for global South cooperation over the next decades could be, for example, climate action and sustainable development. Addressing climate change through collective adaptation strategies, renewable energy initiatives, and climate justice is critical. South-South cooperation can pool resources and also expertise to tackle these challenges effectively. Another priority could be economic resilience and trade diversification. Promoting industrialization. For instance, Ethiopia is nowadays trying to industrialize by forging the experience in China, from China, so South-South cooperation. Trade diversification. For instance, Ethiopia has now liberalized trade, opened up opportunities for others to come and involve, including in retail business, and integrated investment strategies. This will reduce dependence on commodities and enhance self-reliance among the global South nations. The third point is technology and innovation. Leveraging partnership for technology transfers, digital public infrastructure. These innovations can empower developing economies to bypass traditional industrial sites. Another one is social protection and human capital development. This is key and very, very important. This is where the countries need to support each other, learn from one another, share successful models for social protection, for vocational training, and education, and this will strengthen labor markets and address vulnerability among informal workers, women, and the youth. Particularly creating opportunities for the youth is very important. And another priority area is geopolitical solidarity. Strengthening multilateral platforms to amplify the collective voice of the Global South in global governance reforms. This is very essential for equitable representation for the Global South. Thank you.
Thank you. There's quite a long list of issues that need to be tackled by the Global South. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Ambassador Tembele, do you have anything to add, or do you agree with some of the points that was mentioned?
Yeah, thank you very much. I do agree to the point that you say, but I think I also needed to add just one point which was already spoken by Prof about, the importance of enhancing cooperation through institutions. The Bandung spirit, the declaration, intrinsic to that was also the promotion of multilateralism. And therefore, it's very important to embrace, the spirit and enhance cooperation through the institution, for example, the African Union, with ASEAN. Sometimes I join others who have problems with the definitional conundrum of the Global South. It is so amorphous that when you want to talk of a clear strategy going forward, that's where you stumble into the problems that who are you including in the Global South, because, of the diversity that is within the Global South. So for me, what I think very important is to enhance cooperation, and especially what he has also alluded to, the issue of multi-engagement as, the means to an end. So we proliferate our engagement with within the Global South. I'm using it, because it still has some discursive utility. So we proliferate our engagement within the Global South, so that the next time when this big guy sneezes, we don't catch the flu. As it is happening right now. So I think I agree with him, and already discussions have started that the African Union is also looking to engage, with the ASEAN more closely than it used to be. So I thought, because my colleague has already spoiled a lot of points, I thought that is very important point that I should also add, that our engagement now should be institutionalized, but within the Global South framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Tung, please do add some insights on this issue.
I want to make 2 points here. With regard to adaptation, my first point is about how to cope with China. Everybody was saying that we are not taking side, right? That means we are not taking side before the US and Soviet Union. Now we are talking about not taking side either the US and China. Ironically, China is the one who have to introduce the 10 principles of Bandung, right? So we have 2 aspects here. One is not taking side with China. What do we mean by not taking side with China? I think that when China wants to build something like an order by itself, and it is what we have to be cautious. You want to be more independent from China's expanding its influence here. But on the other hand, on the other aspect, we are having China as the #1 trade partner, for example, great economic opportunities with China. And I think that the mode of cooperation between China and the Asian countries, ASEAN and African countries, where China is the biggest trading partners with us. So that shows to some extent the application of the Bandung principles here. So on the one hand, we have to make sure that we are not really taking side in order to be making one or the be victorious over the other, and on the other hand, we have to make sure that the type of cooperation that we have with China would be supportive to the 10 principles that we are upholding. So it's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is about related to the question how we can promote cooperation among us. I think that we have to be really dependent and really promoting the multilateral agenda that we are all members. So globally, we have the UN, the United Nations framework, and I think that the most important framework is the Millennium Developmental Goal, that we can be having the common point to start with. Then we have the non-aligned movement, and I think that if we are relying on the non-aligned movement, at least we can be a little bit freer from the notion of global south, because global south is actually something that the Western scholars was coining. So I think that if we start with on the global agenda, apart from the UN, we can rely on the non-aligned movement to start with. And then, secondly, we would start with the regional and inter-regional level. Regional level where the ASEAN, like I said earlier, can be a good example of how the countries in Southeast Asia can build the mode of cooperation among us, and then this experience can be shared with other regions, and then we have inter-regional cooperation that follows. And then we would be more focusing on the minilateralism, where we can have smaller countries cooperating on the more specific theme within the broader framework of either regional or inter-regional or global. So the Deputy Foreign Minister was introducing to us the cooperation between Indonesia and Malaysia at the bordering provinces. I think this is a very good example of how we could do at the mini-lateral level. So I think that would be a promising way to invent our cooperation. And within the themes of cooperation, I totally agree with Ambassador from Ethiopia that we should be working on the traditional field of cooperation, economic development, education, so on and so forth. But we should be more focusing on the new areas that we have on the common challenge or opportunities: climate change, digital economy, high sea level rising, that is, and food security, of course. So that is the areas that we can be more focusing in our cooperative projects in the future.
Thank you. Professor Kuik, please.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate being the last panelist of this group, because the big and also difficult questions and issues have been addressed by all my fellow panelists. So let me just echo, but also perhaps add a few points supporting all the insightful observations that have been made by the three panelists. I think it's about 3M that really we are seeing that they have been happening, and there are additional growing signs that things are also happening along these three M's. The first M is about multipolar, right? I think it's quite clear that either militarily or non-militarily, we are seeing in Asia, in Africa, and elsewhere, it's not just about US and China, right? Many other powers, either you call it second-tier powers, Europe, India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, so on and so forth, they are playing in one way or another. Sometimes converge with big power A, sometimes you have see more cooperation, right? On the digital, I think Ambassador Tung talked about digital, right? Digital is one example. You know, it's not the choices for countries in global south. It's not about whether or not it's Huawei or not Huawei. Hey, Ericsson is also an option. Samsung and many others are an option as well. And the same for semiconductor. If you go to all those places in Vietnam, in Malaysia, you are seeing like it's not just about US and China. There are many other kind of partners as well. Which brings me to the second M, right? I think this is what Amitav Acharya mentioned. He said that multipolar is true, but multiplex is also relevant in the 21st century. So difference is that multipolar, you focus mainly on powers, on sovereign countries that are powerful. Amitav Acharya reminded us that, yeah, state actors, powerful actors are important, non-state actors, subnational actors, so on and so forth are important as well. So we are going to see a multiplex in the sense that some non-state actors will continue to play some bridging role, collaborating, encouraging cooperation in one way or another. And the third and final point is about multi-layered, right? Multi-layered in the sense that I think earlier on it was Ambassador Rajiv who talked about Bandung Plus. And the term that came into my mind immediately was we are talking about the same thing, multi-layer, in a sense that multilateralism is something that all fellow panelists, all three ambassadors emphasize. But we all know that those who emphasize multilateralism, they also have in mind bilateralism, diplomacy continue to play a part. And minilateralism he mentioned, and I would like to provide an ASEAN perspective of minilateralism. Many of our friends, proponents of Indo-Pacific, they claim that minilateralism is an invention of Quad because of there was a time that minilateral as a concept come into the lexicon of diplomacy and strategic studies. We in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore especially, we say, wait a minute, right? Minilateralism existed long ago. One good example would be Malacca Strait Patrol, right? It was Indonesia, Singapore and Malaysia come together and then Thailand joined when conditions were right. We practice minilateralism as we are promoting ASEAN-wide in one way or another. So that's one example. Another example will be a TCA, right? Trilateral cooperative arrangement. So Strait of Malacca on the one side, and then you have Sulu, Sulawesi Sea, again Indonesia and Malaysia, but this time together with Philippines. So we have all these minilateral, and the beauty for African and also Asian countries, whether we attended the Bandung 1955 or not, is that we see all these multi-layers are not either or, but they are actually complementary, right? And depends on the level of convergence. If we converge more with this and that group of countries, let's do this together. Subnational elements that the Vice Minister mentioned, right? You know, the subnational in Indonesia, having more and more cooperation with different states and provinces elsewhere is just another example and model that I think can be applied individual ASEAN and Asian and also Africa countries to pursue one way or another. And this is true both for developmental issue, but also, I guess, diplomatic, and also perhaps at some point, security in one way or another. I will stop here.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes, please do.
Sorry, I have to interject because there's one very, very important point that Professor made, and I think I lived that experience, and I thought I should share with that. The importance of engagement from different layers, not only the state. And I will give this by an anecdote. You know, there was an Indonesian company that is planning to invest in Tanzania, and it's quite a huge investment, $1.5 billion investment in a factory. And when they came to me and they wanted to make an assessment of the strength of our economy and all that, they came with an assessment report from Moody's. And this is not a pronouncement on Moody or anything, but I remember to have said, to them jokingly that I understand you've already made your decision to invest in Tanzania, but you've pegged your decision based on the report from Moody's. But do you have a similar, entity in Indonesia that does the assessment of the economies of the African countries, or from the South, let me use the South. So even though we may be preaching about engagement in different layers, but our thinking is still very West-centric, and that's the point you say was very important, because even when we want to invest within our own countries, but we have to rely on the rating agencies from elsewhere, to determine our investment outcome. And that to me was, I said it jokingly then, but when you made that point, I said, I remember that, because I asked him, why do you rely on that? Don't you have something in Indonesia, a similar entity that can do assessment of the Tanzanian economy? So I thought it's an important point that I bet when we say we want to engage, then at least we should mean that engagement should be in different layers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. So that was some very interesting remarks, I think, and some very important points. And I think, multilateralism is something that is widely repeated in our discussions. And some of the issues that I think are also in common in some of your remarks have been on cooperation on climate, on sustainability, on digital. So I think these are some of the issues that are of common interest both in the Asian continent and the African continent. So I'd like to move on to inviting some questions from the audience as well. So we have quite ample of time. So if you do have some questions, please raise your hands and let me know. Can I start from the center first, if there's any? Okay, Ambassador Bhatia, I'll take one here first. I move over here. Okay, the lady at the back. And then I move over here if there's any. Okay, if not from here, I'll go back here and then over to you. So first, can I have a microphone right in front? Okay, you do have already. Please do.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Very enriching dialogue. But I wanted to raise a somewhat provocative issue here. I think CSIS focused attention on Bandung and the Global South. But now, and in the session before, when the Deputy Foreign Minister spoke, essentially two ideas are coming in. One is that Bandung spirit is still very relevant, but now we have to move beyond the non-aligned movement. We have to look at the world from the lens of the Global South. The other idea is that no. Non-alignment movement is still relevant. We should not leave it. We should work around it, because the Global South is amorphous, it is diverse. We don't know who's in, who's out. It is in this context I want to say that the 21st century's problems cannot be resolved by using the older methods of 20th century. The world has changed massively. As I mentioned, non-aligned movement conferences take place. You don't really now bother too much about them. Even G77 still exists formally, but the spirit has gone out of them. And so we four countries, Indonesia, India, Brazil, South Africa, we invested all our energies on G20. We worked together. As a result, the African Union was admitted as a full member of G20, which was never the case before. So the point I'm making is, we have the choice. We can keep worshipping at the altar of NAM, but not too many people are going there. Or we can update ourselves and we can say that, look, those institutions have done their work, but now the world is changed. It is no longer bipolar, and therefore we have to follow a new methodology, a new strategy, with all the subjects that Ambassador of Ethiopia delineated so well. So I just want to get some reactions at some stage, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your very informative panel. I'm Tomoko Takahashi, Assistant Professor at Kyoto University. And I'm personally really interested in the multi-layeredness of coalitions of the Global South within the United Nations.
so namely Group of 77 as well as the non-aligned movement. And when it comes to G77 and NAM, I feel like there are subtleties and differences with regard to the positionality with India, China in particular. And I'd be very interested in learning about your opinions on these differences of the two coalitions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable speakers. My name is Christopher from the Philippines, and I am a proud recipient of the Kemitraan Negara Berkembang, or KNB Scholarship Program, a Bandung Spirit-based, fully funded initiative by the Indonesian government aimed at students from developing countries to study in Indonesia and to empower local wisdom and culture. Speaking of that, since much of today's discussion has focused on economics, geopolitics, and international relations, I'd like to bring attention to another crucial dimension, the production of knowledge in the global south. While many of our nations have achieved political independence, we continue to operate within a global knowledge systems largely dominated by the developed countries, such as Western-centric curricula, academic journals that have been filtered through foreign frameworks. In effect, our minds are still being colonized. Moving ahead, how can we begin to decolonize knowledge and empower the global south as a hub of intellectual leadership? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we have three questions already, a little bit diverse, three questions. Can I go to the speakers in reverse order? So Professor Kuik first.
Caught me by surprise.
That's the idea.
So let me also be copycat by addressing questions by reverse order. Right?
You have all the freedom.
Yeah, that's right. You are always inspirational in more than one way. So to answer, I thought that's an excellent question about the knowledge production. And cut the long story short, we can go on for 3 hours for this issue, is that early on we also knew that, 15, 20 years ago, there was a so-called movement within the study of IR called the non-Western IR and all that. But that was only lasted for a while. Later on, they actually, I would say, transformed, upgraded to the so-called global IR, which, to be honest, I don't know how you feel. I love global IR much more than non-Western. For the same reason that Fifi earlier on provoked us, right? If we focus so much about global South, we are already like putting ourselves vis-a-vis the global North. In this sense as well, right? Non-Western, the Western, do you really have a clear-cut line? Knowledge is knowledge, right? So global IR is better in that sense. It, in a way, address and reflect, the problem and also awareness that knowledge production should go beyond ethnocentric in the sense that shouldn't be a Western-centric, Europe-centric, or North America-centric, so on and so forth. We encourage more so-called voices, either from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, different Asia, to provide the kind of perspective for analyzing IR or international issues, but from your own cultural, societal background. I think that's the right kind of a direction, and we can continue to that. And then the second question, sorry, thanks so much for going, but I think it's an aging sign as well, right? I know you asked me to kind of contrast two different things, but now I forgot which are the two different issues. Okay, and NAM. Okay, I guess this issue can be addressed together with Ambassador Rajiv's question in the sense that we are talking about the multi-layered arrangements, right? It's not really like particularly one group, NAM as itself. Whoever the most supportive of NAM, those countries, whichever regions they are, I'm pretty sure they acknowledge, and all leaders, those are important, essential, but not sufficient. So meaning that you would add on, right? You add on many other elements based on your own needs, based on where your geographical areas are. So I would think that multi-layered will continue. And today, what is the real driver? These things predated Trump 2.0 and definitely even 1.0. But I would say that what is going on right now as we speak will actually expedite give more reasons so that we are going to develop more options. It's not very efficient, I agree. If you can't really have a very neat division of labor across institutions. But what is going on right now is that if we can only use one phrase, right? I think uncertainty is the only certainty. And if uncertainty, unpredictability exists, manifests in global, regional, and other aspects, you need more mechanism in one way or another. And I hope with that, I address both questions. Thanks very much.
I would like to, again, make 2 points. Point one is to respond to the question posed by our Philippines friend. I think that in terms of production of knowledge, my personal experience and the experience of the diplomatic academy that I come from is a very positive about what we learned from joining ASEAN in terms of joining the think tank network, the ASEAN ISIS. We learned so much from participation of the ASEAN ISIS meetings and the ASEAN ISIS extended network like NEAT on NET. So I think that we learn about the region, we learn about the interaction among the big powers, we learn even about the new terminology like security landscape, things like that. And I think that all of us, by participation in the ASEAN ISIS network, know more about the world outside of Vietnam, and then we know about the way that we can promote cooperation, and we have also personal links that we can rely on in order to seek for more knowledge, or in order even to ask for advice when we want to propose the policy recommendation for government. So that is to say that at the regional level, the knowledge can be produced in a very efficient way. And then this type of knowledge is also be very modern, updated. I still remember having so many colleagues from Vietnam joining the PhD and master's program in Singapore, CSIS, National University, and National University of Malaysia. And we have top-notch professors graduating from top-notch universities in the region and in the world. And we are providing our experts elsewhere, Professor Amitabh Acharya, Lempengel, they are internationally recognized scholars. So I think that this is very important for us in terms of thinking of cooperation for younger people, providing them with knowledge in order to build a new generation of scholars and policymakers for our region and other regions. My second point is somehow related to the comments by the Indian ambassador about the relevance of the Bandung spirit. I think at the bottom line it is about the principles of relations among countries in the region that can be divided into two types. One is the big powers relation and the implications to smaller countries, and the other one is the relations among the southern countries, I mean the non-aligned movement countries. And basically what we are witnessing these days is not really different by nature what we saw for the last several decades. Big powers relations either in the in the competitive or in the cooperative modes are affecting our countries, and we have to cope with that. And the need for greater autonomy from our part is also more relevant than before. So I think that if we read the 10 principles and we can relate to the contemporary situation, we see the relevance. Of course, the 10 principles can be applied to the new situation. When we have, like in the morning or in the afternoon, we also heard about the new big powers relations, the new context of digital economy, for example, environmental protection needs, and the need for the economic development at home. So the same problems, but the new context. But at the bottom line, the principles of international relations are the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think the fortunes have turned now. We are speaking last, so you find most of the points have been spoken. But at least let me just give a few remarks with respect to the need to decolonize our minds. I think I've given an example here that which illustrates your point, and I tend to agree that somebody wants to invest in the fellow country in the south, but has to rely from an entity from the west to tell him how resilient my economy is before he can make an investment decision. The problem we've been suffering, and this is historical, that Africa and Asia have been a victim of what I would call word-centric intellectual chauvinism. So because we have either been trained from the West or we've been influenced for historical reasons by the West, so our thinking has been the West. I was invited by BRIN, I think some 3 months ago, to speak about the importance of cooperating in area studies. And this, I think this is one of the area that we should be look at, and probably I would also use the term that we also need to have an intellectual renaissance of the Bandung spirit, because you might have an economic and political, but intellectually, if you're still colonized, then you are not going to go anywhere, because you'll also need to be reading reports from elsewhere and all that. Another point I wanted to make is, to support my senior ambassador from India, and I would agree with what Ambassador has said. Bandung give us the principle, but also I think this, the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs has also said, I think we also need to modernize the agenda for Bandung, because we have got the principle. It's a formidable foundation that we can build our cooperation on, but that would not abdicate us from the responsibility of modernizing the agenda for cooperation, because there are so much areas that we can cooperate, and the models of development are changing day and day, so we cannot rely from anything from the 1955. But at least it gives us, the foundation on which to build the cooperation framework that we aspire to build currently. So I thought I should say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree totally with what my colleagues have said concerning the three issues. I just only want to say one important thing. In the global south, when we think of global south, there is some hypothetical global north. So global south should adopt a pragmatic and a balanced approach in its relation with the global north, focusing on areas of mutual benefit. When it comes to knowledge production, the issue is to what extent are the global south part and the parcel or equal beneficiary of the knowledge production or the technology from the knowledge production. So we have to focus on areas of mutual benefit while addressing systemic inequalities. Multilateralism is very important. Concerning Bandung principles, it could be applied at home, in each country, in a regional or sub-regional areas, between regions, and also in the global south. So I think we have to start working from within our countries when it comes to implementing the Bandung principles. Principles are relevant, the Bandung principles are relevant and will remain relevant. The strategies and issues could change based upon with whom we are working. Is it at the regional level, sub-regional level, or with the South Cooperation? I think that is what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any, okay, so I see one question here. Maybe that's the last one because I assume everybody's tired. It's been a long day. So I'll give my colleague Andrew one last words for us. Last question. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mbak Fifi. I have two questions. One is about ASEAN and the second is about the sort of normative principles on multilateralism. First question is on ASEAN. If Professor Amitav Acharya has been frequently mentioned in this today about his ideas on ASEAN and so on and so forth. And if we refer back to his writings on whose ideas matter, for example, he mentioned that Bandung Principles is the normative bedrock that have been adopted by ASEAN later in the form of non-intervention norms, which is localized by ASEAN practice, and then it developed into non-interference consensus building kind of style adopted in ASEAN. My question to Professor Cheng Chwee Kuik, if the strategic convergences of the current ASEAN member states is hedging, what do you think of the consequences for ASEAN if it was founded on the principles that all ASEAN member states abide into the norms of non-intervention? So do you think that in the current geopolitical tension and US-China rivalry, there could be some tension between these shared ideas of non-intervention vis-a-vis the desire to be hedging with regards to great power? And my second question is, when Bandung Principles was founded in 1955, the multilateral system was built towards the ideas not only sovereignty, but also free market, democracy, human rights, and so on and so forth. If we're going to refurbish this kind of idea today, what kind of normative elements that's still worth saving? Because if we're not careful, then probably we say something similar to whatever has been mentioned by President Trump today, which is regarded to resource nationalism, economic sovereignty, and so on and so forth, which I believe has been close to some of the practices of the countries mentioned in the Global South. Thank you.
Okay, it's only fitting the last question is the most difficult one. So I'm going to ask you to answer that because that question was specifically to you. The other three speakers, could I ask you to say maybe some last remarks about, how you see this in the future? How do you see Asia, Africa, Global South role in actually trying to build a new world order, as we say? So I'll begin with you again, Professor Kuik.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew, for this very tough question. I guess with the time that we have, let me just make three quick points. Number one, clearly, Amitav is a good friend, and I admire a lot of his work, but he's a social constructivist. I'm not really, I'm a fallen constructivist. I'm now a realist. So we have a different way of looking at things. That's number one. Secondly, as a realist, we acknowledge the importance of norms and all that, but you also focus more on power and interest, just to acknowledge what are really going on. And so therefore, the way I look at non-intervention and also many other related norms, including what have been emphasized through 1976 TAC, right? Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. That is really the essence of what ASEAN as a group tried to build upon the Bandung spirit, but with the local and regional spirit and cooperation. That it took us a long time to convince the powerful actors out there to actually accept and sign a TAC, even though they have reservation, but they do sign eventually during the post-colonial era. Second point, right? So third point and final point is that, so I believe it's not a matter of like whether or not and to what extent norm, like non-intervention really it's contradictory to hedging. To me as a realist, I see that all those norms, non-intervention, so on and so forth, are very foundations of whole countries, either Vietnam or those in the CLMV countries, and also those of us in the maritime Southeast Asia. We try to hedge mainly because of we are doing that, not because hedging is ideal. Nothing is ideal. But we are trying to hedge in one way or another because of that is the second best option that will ensure our survival. If emphasizing some norms help us to maximize our leverage, we will do that. But other than that, we all understand that hedging, to have a kind of a more practical way of doing that, you need to do it in as I mentioned earlier on. So let me end by how I started, right, and where I started. Hedging means that even without saying it, you need to ensure that you are not putting all eggs in any power's basket. You need to make sure that you're not siding one against the other. You need to do it actively, inclusively, and adaptively. As situations change, situations always change. You need to do more rather than less. And clearly, we are already going beyond ASEAN, right? By going ASEAN plus 3, EAS, and also ADMM plus, and now with ASEAN GCC China, it's a clear sense and also added kind of evidence that we have always been active, inclusive, and adaptive. And the current growing uncertainty will push us into those directions.
In the concluding thoughts, I think that we have to acknowledge a very important fact that makes the difference between Bandung and Bandung Plus. That is the end of the Cold War, where the Soviet Union and the Soviet bloc collapsed. And then the developing countries are left with just one system, which is the market, the economy that is run by the market principles. And I think that this is having both sides. On the one hand, it is still not addressing the matter of exploitation and the developmental gap that is getting wider and wider between the global south and the global north. But by accepting the principle of market economy, some countries, including Vietnam, can be lifted out of poverty. And I think that is the positive side of taking the developmental model based on the market economy. And luckily, we have the ASEAN and East Asian models to follow. So I think that in the years to come, when we want to get out of poverty, when we want to be prosperous, the East Asian models, the ASEAN success story, can be a point for reference. Next, if we want to get out of the middle income trap, I think that would be taking more time, and we don't know what is the best model for us. And I think that it is the area where the countries in the South can be more cooperative in this. I would like to end by saying that if we look and if we read the 10 points, 10 principles, something is lacking and something is needed in order to make the Bandung spirit more adaptive to the current situation. I think that the greater focus would be on confidence and trust building. and crisis management measures, and that is more relevant these days because we may not be facing the say big and devastating military conflicts, especially by the big powers, but in the gray zone when peace and war can be both having potentials to be happening, we have to think of trust building before we think of specific cooperative projects, and we have to be more conversant in the crisis management measures, because if we cannot control the situation, the crisis can happen, and then that would lead to unpredictable outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. A very quick one. You know, the Bandung spirit and you know, the South-South cooperation gives us an avenue to proliferate our engagements, and by proliferation, that would you know, help to cushion, I mean, our countries, Asia and Africa, from the exogenous shocks like the one that we are currently seeing. And one very important aspect, and I think I should emphasize here, that being an international relations scholar myself, I don't see that if there's any possibility of having an alternative world order that does not include, you know, these countries that are wreaking havoc now, because, you know, they're just too big to be left out. So whatever order that you might envision, it has to include them. So at least the Bandung spirit give us what I would say a modus vivendi, and so that we should be able to navigate our way around, you know, without stepping on their toes. And I think this is very, very important point that I thought I should make in the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think when we think of Bandung principles, and particularly given the current realities, it's very important to use existing platforms such as ASEAN and the African Union to present a unified voice in the global negotiations, particularly on trade, climate action, and governance reforms. It's also very important that countries need to promote inclusive diplomacy, engaging diverse stakeholders, and ensuring equitable representation in global decision-making processes that can help address the power imbalances and enhancing economic autonomy, reducing dependence on the traditionally North through South-South cooperation in technology, trade, and infrastructure development. This will strengthen the Global South position and implementation of the Bandung principles. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the four speakers today. I think we have had a very rich discussion. I very much, personally very much enjoyed this. I hope everyone enjoyed this as well. So please join me in giving a round of applause to the four speakers. Thank you so much. So we have come to the end of this session today. It's been a long day since this morning. On behalf of CSIS, I would like to thank all of the speakers that have provided us with their great insights today. His Excellency Marty Natalegawa and Havas Oegroseno have left. Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, thank you so much for your keynote speech this morning, and also the speakers from this afternoon session. All four of you, thank you so much. It has been repeated throughout the event today that we think that the Bandung spirit and its principles remain relevant as developing nations seek greater agency in global affairs. But we are also in agreement that we need to go beyond. We need to modernize the agenda. So that's something that's been said. And today we have tried to explore how countries from the Global South can work together to strengthen economic and development cooperation, push for reforms in multilateral institutions, and address pressing challenges. Well, if we use the Asia-Afrika conference as a measure or standard of success, of course we are very far from success in our effort today. I don't think we can compete with that. But I think as an exercise amidst the current global challenges, I think we have at least been successful to look deeper into the Bandung spirit, to ask questions, which I think will allow us in each of our respective ways, wearing our own respective hats, to contribute to establishing the road ahead as we aspire. So on behalf of CSIS, again, I thank all of you, Excellencies, esteemed participants. Thank you for your active participation and for enriching the discussion. I thank my seniors at CSIS. Pak Yusuf Wanandi is the one with the idea to have this event today. Without him, none of us would be discussing any of this. So thank you so much, Pak Yusuf. If everyone would join me in thanking Pak Yusuf Wanandi. Also, thank you, Pak Hassan, for the guidance when we were planning and preparing for this event today. Also, I thank my colleagues at CSIS, Pak Yose for leading this project. Of course, Lina for being the one who's actually making things happen around here. And to all the colleagues behind the scene who have been working tirelessly, I can't name all of you, but I think everyone behind the scene deserves a round of applause as well. Thank you so much to my colleague. So we look forward to seeing all of you again in CSIS events, next events. Thank you so much for staying with us until the afternoon. I hope you all have a very good rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is just a housekeeping announcement. If you're still serving, we're still serving our coffee and tea right outside of the room. Please do enjoy them if you'd like to stay a bit for a post-event networking session, so please do stay. And recording of the event will be available in our CSIS Indonesia YouTube channel, so feel free to access that as well. Thank you so much.